In a real application, we'd be getting data from a database. And I actually built a very simple server here. Let's just take a look at it. Um, Nothing fancy here. Here's my Express. I'm listening on a port, and I'm actually just putting my SQLize in this one file. Obviously, it would make more sense to separate it out at some point. But here's my foo model. Here's my bar model. I've also even got a class method that'll generate a random foo. The same thing that was happening on the client side, but it's actually going to be persisted. I've got some syncing going on here, and I'm creating two random foos and two random bars here. We could even go in here and create another random bar. So when the app ends up running, I'm going to end up creating these, and I've got 4 routes. I've got routes that'll get my foos and create a foo, routes that will get a bar and will end up creating a bar. And I could start this application. The other thing that I'm doing is instead of, I'm running a server, and I'm going to end up loading my index.html file from this server. So I'm going to go over here. Let's go over here and close this down. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to specify nodemon server.js. This is going to run my server. And I'm going to go over here and do localhost 3000. And this will run the same way it did before, but none of this stuff is being persisted. I could add some bars, but if I refresh, they'll go away, and that's just because they're in memory. So I'm going to set up a couple of methods here. Now I'm going to focus on my client. I'm also going to need Axios because I'm going to make calls to my server. So here we're going to be sort of tying the loop by getting our data now from the back end. And here's our Axios. And I'm going to have 2 methods here. So I've got my add random foo. I'm actually going to get rid of this asynchronous code because I really don't need it. And I'm going to get rid of add random bar here. But I'm going to actually have 2 other methods here. I'm going to have a method for fetch foos. And this is what's going to end up getting the foos from the server. And what I'm going to end up doing over here, I'm going to make this asynchronous. And I could put this on one line, but it's just as easy to say store. I want to dispatch. What do I want to dispatch? So I'm going to have a new type called set foos. And I'm going to end up getting this data of the foos. I'm going to end up getting it by putting an await in. And this is going to be axios.get API foos. And again, I'm putting that in await so I could do await and I could end up getting the data. And that's going to be one of my actions. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. This is another slice of my state. This is bars. This is going to be set bars. And I'm going to be calling the bars endpoint. Now, none of these actions are doing anything yet, and I'm not even calling them yet. But if I'm making this change, I also probably want to go over here and do an else if action type equals setFoos. So this is when I'm getting them from the server. And in this case, this is my state is actually just action.foos. Right? That's what's being passed in here. And I could do the same thing over here. This is going to be set bars. Now I'm not calling this, but let's go over here and instead of adding random things here, let's call fetch foos and fetch bars. Again, I'm not doing anything in here that's asynchronous, right? There are things happening that are asynchronous, but eventually my Redux store will have the right state and my connected components will end up reflecting that. So this is going to be fetch bars. And let's refresh this. Take a look here. And let's just take a quick, so I see here I'm missing, this needs to be around here. right? I need to await, get this data before I can end up calling data on it. So I was missing a parenthesis. Let's refresh this. Action type is not defined, and it's going to be, that's true. So when we end up calling this, let's go up here. So here I've got, this should be a dot. And now, we've got to make sure, let's just take a look at our bars here. We've got our foods and our bars, and my guess is it doesn't like when you have no value on your state. It's telling us, hey, look, there's a problem. You have undefined on your state. That's not a good thing, and that's happening because I misnamed this. Now we've got our foods and our bars, but right now, when we add, right, this is just happening in memory. And we could take care of this one real quick as well, because here what we could end up doing, similar to something that we did on the other one, is that we could also do an await. And the await is going to be Axios get slash API foods. And we're going to end up getting, once that's done, we're going to get some data from there. If that's going to be asynchronous, we need to put async in front of it. And let's make sure that that works. So we should be able to add a foo and see that it ends up persisting. Let's just take a quick look. And I think here, we're getting our foo back. This is the foo that we're adding. And again, just mistype this. This is going to be a post. That's how I'm going to get my data. So here, I could add a foo, and I'll see that that ends up getting persisted in the database. And let's do the same thing with our bar. So again, what we're doing here is this is going to be data that we end up getting. We're going to have to make an Axios call, so I'm just going to put this right in parentheses and say data. And this is going to be Axios dot post slash API bars, and this has to have an await in front of it. So what ends up going to your store has to be just a plain old object, but nothing prevents us from making an Axios call before we call it. If there's an error that's here, nothing's going to end up getting dispatched to my store. And if we go over here, this is going to be async. So we wait until this is complete, and when it's complete, we'll end up dispatching to our store. So here, we've got bars, and we could add bars. They'll end up being persisted, and we could end up adding foods as well. So now we've got the back end that's connected to the front end of our application, and we're at least able to go and read data by setting foods and setting bars, adding foods and adding bars. And if this was a CRUD application, we'd actually have some methods for creating each of these and updating them and deleting them as well.